Maya Rodriguez had never been one to seek attention. At 22, she stood barely 5'3", with calloused hands that spoke of years helping her grandfather maintain their small ranch in rural Texas. When she stepped off the bus at Marine Corps Recruit Depot Paris Island, South Carolina, the humid air hit her like a wall, but it was the stairs that made her stomach churn. "Look at this one," she heard someone whisper behind her. Did they lower the height requirements or something? Maya kept her eyes forward as she joined the sea of recruits shuffling toward the yellow footprints painted on the asphalt. She dreamed of this moment since she was 12, watching her older brother Marcus return from his first deployment with stories that made her eyes shine with pride. But Marcus had been 6'2" and built like a linebacker. Maya looked like she'd blow away in a strong wind. The drill instructors began their infamous welcome, screaming orders that echoed across the humid South Carolina evening. Maya moved with the crowd, muscle memory from years of early ranch mornings keeping her alert despite the chaos. She'd been up before dawn most of her life. This was just louder. "Listen up, maggots." Staff Sergeant Rebecca Walsh's voice cut through the noise like a blade. Walsh was a legend at Paris Island, a 20-year veteran with dead eyes and a reputation for breaking the cocky ones. "You think you're tough? You think you're ready? I've seen Girl Scouts with more backbone." As the drill instructors separated the recruits into platoons, Maya found herself assigned to 3rd Platoon under Walsh's command. The other recruits in her group were mostly young men who looked like they'd stepped out of a recruiting poster, tall, broad-shouldered, confident. Then there was Maya, quietly checking her gear and trying to blend into the background. "Rodriguez," Walsh's voice made Maya's spine snap straight. The drill instructor approached, circling her like a predator sizing up prey. "What's your story, recruit? You look like you got lost on your way to a church picnic." "No, ma'am," Maya replied, her voice steady despite her racing heart. Walsh leaned closer, close enough that Maya could see the skepticism in her eyes. "We'll see about that. This isn't summer camp, little girl. This is where we make Marines. Real Marines." As the recruits were herded toward their barracks for their first night, Maya caught fragments of whispered conversations around her. The consensus was clear. She wouldn't last a week. Maya unpacked her few belongings in silence, placing a worn photo of her grandfather in his Vietnam-era Marine dress blues on her footlocker. Tomorrow, the real test would begin. Singled out, the 4:30 wake-up call came like a thunderclap. But Maya was already awake. Ranch life had trained her to rise before dawn, and anxiety had kept her alert through most of the night. Around her, other recruits stumbled from their racks, cursing and fumbling for their uniforms. "Move, move, move." Staff Sergeant Walsh burst through the squad bay like a hurricane. "You've got exactly 4 minutes to get your sorry selves in formation." Maya was dressed and standing at attention beside her rack in under 3 minutes, watching as her fellow recruits struggled with bootlaces and belt buckles. Walsh noticed too. Well, look who's eager to play Marine." Walsh stopped directly in front of Maya, close enough that Maya could smell the coffee on her breath. "Tell me, Rodriguez, what makes you think you belong here with the big boys?" "I want to serve my country, Maya replied, staring straight ahead. "Your country." Walsh's laugh was cold. "Your country needs Marines who can carry a wounded battle buddy to safety. Can you do that, Rodriguez? Can your skinny arms hold 200 pounds of dead weight across a battlefield?" Maya felt heat creep up her neck, but kept her voice level. "I'll do whatever it takes, ma'am. We'll see." The first week blurred together in a haze of push-ups, running, and constant screaming. Maya struggled with some of the physical challenges. She finished last in most runs, needed help scaling the higher obstacles, and could barely complete the minimum push-ups required. But she never quit, never complained, and never asked for special treatment. It was during combat training that Walsh's particular attention became clear. While other recruits made mistakes and received standard correction, Maya's errors earned extended punishment details. Rodriguez, your weapon position is garbage. Drop and give me 20. Rodriguez, you're holding up the entire platoon. Everyone, thank Rodriguez for your extra PT. Rodriguez, what are you even doing here? This isn't a place for little girls playing dress-up. The other recruits began to notice. Some looked at Maya with pity, others with growing resentment as her punishment details affected the entire platoon. A few started avoiding her altogether, not wanting to be associated with the recruit who couldn't keep up. But it was during their first trip to the rifle range that something shifted. Maya had grown up hunting with her grandfather, using his old Winchester to take deer that fed their family through lean winters. The feel of a rifle in her hands was as natural as breathing. When the range safety officer called for recruits to assume the prone position with their M16 or 4 service rifles, Maya settled into her stance with practiced ease. The familiar weight, the sight picture, the controlled breathing, it all came flooding back. Her first shot was a bullseye at 200 yards. The talent emerger's word traveled fast through the platoon about Maya's shooting. By evening chow, recruits who had barely acknowledged her existence were suddenly curious about the quiet girl from Texas. Yo Rodriguez, called Jake Morrison, a former high school football star from Ohio. Where'd you learn to shoot like that? Maya looked up from her tray of mystery meat and powdered eggs. My grandfather taught me. No kidding. My dad took me hunting a few times, but I never shot like that. You were hitting dead center every time. Before Maya could respond, Staff Sergeant Walsh appeared behind her. Morrison, you've got something better to do than chat with Rodriguez? No, ma'am. I don't care what you were doing. Finish your chow and prepare for evening inspection. Walsh's eyes lingered on Maya with an expression that had shifted from dismissive to something harder to read. Maya went back to eating, but she could feel the drill instructor's gaze burning into the back of her head. The next morning brought the obstacle course, Maya's consistent weakness. The rope climb, in particular, had become her nemesis. While other recruits scaled the 20-foot rope with relative ease, Maya struggled to make it halfway before her arms gave out. Rodriguez, Walsh's voice echoed across the training area. What are you doing up there? Taking a nap? Maya hung from the rope, arms shaking with exhaustion, sweat stinging her eyes. Below, she could see her fellow recruits watching with a mixture of embarrassment and impatience. I can't make it, ma'am, Maya gasped, the admission burning in her throat. Can't? Walsh's voice rose to a shriek. There is no can't in my corpse. You will climb that rope or you will hang there until you pass out. Maya closed her eyes, thought of her grandfather's weathered hands teaching her to shoot, to never give up, to always find another way. She began moving again, inch by painful inch, until finally her hand slapped the top of the rope. But the victory was short-lived. That afternoon brought another rifle range session, and Maya's performance was even better than before. She was hitting targets that other recruits couldn't even see clearly, placing shots with mechanical precision that had the range safety officers taking notice. Rodriguez called Sergeant Davis, the senior marksmanship instructor. Step over here. Maya approached, expecting another lecture about her physical deficiencies. Instead, Davis handed her a different rifle, an M40A5 sniper rifle. Let's see what you can do with this at 500 yards. Maya settled behind the scope, adjusting for wind and distance with instincts honed by years of hunting in the Texas Hill Country. She took her time, controlled her breathing, and squeezed the trigger. The spotter called back. Dead center, ma'am. A murmur went through the other instructors. Davis nodded slowly. Do it again. Maya did. And again. 5 shots, 5 perfect bullseyes at a distance that challenged experienced Marines. Staff Sergeant Walsh watched from a distance, her jaw tight. That evening she called Maya aside after lights out. You think you're special now, Rodriguez? Walsh's voice was quiet, more dangerous than her usual screaming. Think that little shooting exhibition makes you a Marine? No, ma'am, You're right, it doesn't. Being a Marine is about more than putting holes in paper. It's about strength, endurance, leadership. Things you obviously lack. Maya said nothing, but something in Walsh's tone suggested this conversation was far from over. The setup 3 weeks into training, Maya had settled into an uncomfortable routine. She excelled at marksmanship, consistently outscoring every other recruit in her platoon and most of the instructors. Her academic scores were near perfect, and she'd stopped finishing last in the runs. But Staff Sergeant Walsh's attention had only intensified. "Rodriguez, your footlocker is a disaster. Rearrange it and report to me in 10 minutes. Maya would check her footlocker, perfectly arranged according to regulations, then spend 30 minutes reorganizing it to impossible standards while Walsh watched with cold satisfaction. "Rodriguez, your uniform is wrinkled. Iron it again and report for inspection." The uniform would be flawless, but Walsh would find microscopic flaws that required Maya to start over, often making her late for other training and earning her additional punishment. It was during the combat fitness test that things came to a head. Maya had been steadily improving, her ranch-hardened determination compensating for her smaller stature. She'd passed the ammunition can lifts, completed the movement under fire course, and was working on the maneuver under fire exercise when disaster struck. The exercise required recruits to low crawl under simulated machine gun fire, carrying their weapon and a dummy ammunition box. Maya was making good time when she heard Walsh's voice cutting through the training noise. "Rodriguez, what are you doing? You're supposed to be crawling, not taking a leisurely stroll." Maya was crawling correctly, but she increased her pace anyway. In her hurry, her rifle caught on a piece of wire, jerking her off balance. She lost her grip on the ammunition box, which rolled backward into another recruit behind her. "Rodriguez." Walsh's scream could be heard across the entire training area. "You just compromised your entire unit. Everyone hit the deck. Push-ups until I get tired." As the platoon groaned and began their punishment push-ups, Maya felt 30 pairs of eyes boring into her with undisguised resentment. She'd cost them again. That evening, Jake Morrison confronted her in the squad bay. "What's your deal, Rodriguez? It's like you're trying to make us all look bad." "I'm not trying to do anything except graduate," Maya replied quietly. "Well, maybe you should try harder. Or maybe you should consider if this is really the right place for you." The words stung because Maya had been wondering the same thing. She was good, exceptional, even, at certain aspects of Marine training. But Walsh seemed determined to highlight every weakness, every failure, every moment where Maya's size or strength put her at a disadvantage. Late that night, Maya stared at the photo of her grandfather and wondered if she was fooling herself. Maybe Walsh was right. Maybe wanting something badly enough wasn't the same as being capable of achieving it. But then she remembered the feel of the sniper rifle in her hands, the perfect stillness before each shot, the satisfaction of placing a bullet exactly where she intended from distances that most people couldn't even imagine. She thought about her grandfather's stories of Vietnam, of Marines who came in all sizes but shared the same unbreakable spirit. Maya made a decision. She would not quit. Whatever Walsh threw at her, whatever obstacles she faced, she would find a way to overcome them. And if that meant proving herself in the one area where she excelled beyond question, then that's exactly what she would do. The opportunity came sooner than she expected. The challenge, the announcement came during morning formation. An inter-platoon marksmanship competition would be held in 2 weeks. The top shooter from each platoon would advance to a base-wide competition, with the winner earning recognition and potential assignment to advanced marksmanship schools. Maya felt her pulse quicken. This was it. Her chance to prove that she belonged here, that her struggles with rope climbs and obstacle courses didn't define her worth as a Marine. Staff Sergeant Walsh noticed Maya's reaction immediately. "Don't get your hopes up, Rodriguez," Walsh said after dismissing the formation. "This competition is for Marines, not little girls with lucky shots. "I'd like to try, ma'am," Maya replied. Walsh's smile was cold. "Oh, you'll try. But when you embarrass yourself and this platoon, don't say I didn't warn you." The other recruits had mixed reactions. Jake Morrison seemed genuinely supportive, remembering Maya's performance on the range. Others were skeptical, having witnessed her struggles with physical training. "Look, Rodriguez," said Tommy Chen, a former college athlete from California, "no offense, but this is going to be pressure shooting. Real competition. Not just plinking at targets during regular range time." "I understand," Maya said simply. What they didn't understand was that Maya had been competing since she was 12 years old. County fair shooting competitions, junior marksman contests, informal challenges between local ranchers. She'd been handling pressure long before she ever thought about becoming a Marine. The training intensified over the next week. Maya spent every available moment at the range, working with Sergeant Davis to fine-tune her technique. Davis, initially skeptical of Walsh's diminutive recruit, had become increasingly impressed with Maya's natural ability and mechanical precision. "You've got something special, Rodriguez," Davis told her after a particularly good session. "Question is, can you handle the pressure when it counts?" Maya's answer came the day before the platoon competition. Walsh had been riding her harder than usual, finding fault with everything from her rifle maintenance to her posture during instruction. After evening chow, Walsh cornered Maya outside the mess hall. "I've been thinking about this competition tomorrow," Walsh said, her voice deceptively casual. "Maybe it's not such a good idea for you to participate." Maya felt her stomach drop. "Ma'am, you've been struggling with so many aspects of training. Maybe it would be better for the platoon if someone more well-rounded represented us." "I've qualified for the competition, ma'am. My scores." "Your scores are meaningless if you can't handle the pressure. What if you choke? What if you embarrass not just yourself, but me and this entire platoon?" Maya met Walsh's gaze steadily. "I won't choke, ma'am." "How can you be so sure?" "Because this is what I do. This is who I am." Walsh studied her for a long moment, then nodded slowly. "Fine. But understand this, Rodriguez. If you fail tomorrow, if you make me look like a fool for believing in you, there will be consequences. Your training here will become very, very difficult." Maya almost laughed. Training was already nearly impossible. Walsh's threats had lost their power over her. "I understand, ma'am. I won't let you down." As Maya walked back to the barracks, she realized something had changed. For the first time since arriving at Paris Island, she wasn't afraid of Walsh or her threats. Tomorrow, she would compete on her own terms in her element and let her rifle do the talking. The quiet farm girl was about to remind everyone why they should never underestimate someone who's learned to hit what they aim for. The competition day dawned gray and windy, with gusts that would challenge even experienced marksmen. Maya woke before reveille, her stomach tight with nervous energy, but her mind clear. She dreamed of her grandfather the night before, not the frail man she'd lost to cancer 3 years ago, but the young Marine who'd earned his expert badge in Vietnam. The competition would be held at the main rifle range, with representatives from all 4 training platoons. Maya had watched some of the other competitors during regular training. They were good, some of them very good. Most were bigger, stronger, and more confident than she was. But none of them had grown up taking deer with iron sights at 300 yards. Staff Sergeant Walsh gathered 3rd Platoon's representatives, Maya and Tommy Chen, who'd earned the 2nd slot with consistently solid shooting. "Remember," Walsh told them, her eyes fixed on Maya, "you're representing this platoon and me. Don't make me regret this decision." The competition format was straightforward. 3 stages of increasing difficulty. Stage 1 would be 200 yards prone, slow fire. Stage 2 would be 300 yards from a supported position. The final stage would be 500 yards prone, with wind conditions that had already claimed several casualties during practice rounds. Maya checked her rifle methodically, the same M16A4 she'd been using throughout training. She'd requested permission to zero it herself the day before, and the weapon felt like an extension of her body. The first stage began with minimal ceremony. 20 recruits lay prone behind the firing line, waiting for commands from the range safety officer. Competitors, lock and load 1 magazine, 8 rounds. You will fire 8 rounds slow fire at the 200-yard line. Begin firing when ready. Maya settled into her shooting position, feeling the familiar calm that always preceded her best shooting. She blocked out the other competitors, the watching instructors, even Staff Sergeant Walsh's burning gaze. There was only the target, the wind, and the steady rhythm of her breathing. Her first shot felt perfect the moment she squeezed the trigger. The spotter confirmed. Hit, center ring. 7 more shots followed, each one placed with mechanical precision. When the targets were retrieved and scored, Maya had posted a perfect score, something that had never been achieved in the competition's 5-year history. Tommy Chen whistled low. Jesus Rodriguez. Where'd that come from? Maya said nothing, but she caught Staff Sergeant Walsh's expression from the corner of her eye. The drill instructor looked surprised, almost unsettled. Stage 2 began immediately. The 300-yard targets appeared smaller, more challenging, and the wind was picking up. Maya adjusted her sights and settled into a supported position behind sandbags. This time she wasn't alone at the top. Brad Stevens from 1st Platoon, a former college rifleman, matched her shot for shot. The competition had narrowed to a handful of serious contenders, with several recruits eliminated by scores that would have been respectable in regular training, but weren't enough here. Looking good, Rodriguez, Sergeant Davis murmured as he passed behind the firing line. Keep it up. The final stage was where legends were made or destroyed. 500 yards in gusty wind conditions, with targets that looked like postage stamps through the rifle scopes. Only 8 competitors remained and the pressure was palpable. Maya was the smallest competitor by far, the only woman, and still the recruit most people expected to crack under pressure. As she assumed the prone position for the final time, she heard whispered conversations from the gallery of watching instructors and recruits. She's been lucky so far, but this is where it gets real. Wind's going to eat her alive. $20 says she doesn't break 70%. Maya tuned them out. At 500 yards, there was no room for anything but absolute focus. She studied the grass at various distances, watching for wind patterns. She made minute adjustments to her scope and settled into her final position. The first shot rang out across the range, and Maya knew it was good before the spotter called it. Hit, center ring. The silence from the gallery was deafening. The perfect shot, 8 shots. That's all that stood between Maya Rodriguez and vindication. She'd already fired her first round at 500 yards. A perfect center hit that had silenced the whispered doubts from the gallery. 7 shots remained, and the wind was getting worse. Staff Sergeant Walsh stood behind the firing line, her arms crossed, watching Maya with an expression that had shifted from skepticism to something approaching disbelief. The other competitors were struggling with the conditions. Brad Stevens had already thrown 2 shots wide, and Tommy Chen was visibly frustrated with his grouping. Maya's second shot took forever to arrive downrange, but when it did, the spotter's call was clear. Hit, inner ring. Still perfect. By the 5th shot, other competitors had stopped paying attention to their own targets. Maya was shooting in a different league, placing rounds with surgical precision despite wind conditions that were challenging Marine snipers with years of experience. This is impossible, she heard someone whisper. Maya's 6th shot was her best yet, dead center, exactly where she called it. The range had gone completely quiet except for the wind and the occasional click of her bolt cycling. Staff Sergeant Walsh moved closer to the firing line, close enough that Maya could sense her presence. For a moment, Maya wondered if Walsh was hoping she'd fail, if having the drill instructor she'd battled for weeks watching every move would finally break her concentration. Instead, it focused her even more. Shot 7 was another bullseye, and Maya was now shooting a perfect score through 7 rounds at a distance that most people couldn't hit with a scoped hunting rifle. The gallery of observers had grown as word spread through the base that something special was happening at the rifle range. But it was the 8th and final shot that would become legend. The wind picked up just as Maya was preparing to fire, gusting hard enough to move the flags at sharp angles. A normal shooter would have waited for the wind to die down. Maya read the conditions, made her calculations, and adjusted her point of aim to compensate for a wind drift that would push her bullet nearly 2 feet off course. She exhaled slowly, let her natural respiratory pause arrive, and squeezed the trigger with the same gentle pressure she'd used to take deer in the Texas Hill Country. The shot seemed to hang in the air forever. Through her scope, Maya watched the bullet's trace as it fought the wind, arcing toward the target with a trajectory that looked wrong to everyone watching except her. The spotter's voice, when it came, was barely above a whisper. Perfect hit. Dead center. Maya had just shot 8 for 8 at 500 yards in conditions that had seasoned Marines throwing shots all over the target. She'd posted the highest score in the competition's history, and she'd done it in front of every instructor and recruit who'd written her off as too small, too weak, too different to be a real Marine. The silence stretched for what felt like hours before someone in the gallery began clapping. Then others joined in, and soon the applause was thunderous. Staff Sergeant Walsh walked over to where Maya was still lying prone behind her rifle, looking stunned by what she'd just accomplished. "Rodriguez," Walsh said, her voice carrying none of its usual edge. "Stand up." Maya got to her feet, rifle at port arms, waiting for what came next. Walsh extended her hand. "Outstanding shooting, Marine. Marine, not recruit. Not little girl, Marine." Maya shook her drill instructor's hand, feeling the calusas earned through 20 years of service, and realized that something fundamental had changed between them. "Thank you, ma'am." The base-wide competition was held 2 weeks later. Maya won it by the largest margin in its history, shooting scores that had Marine Corps marksmanship instructors shaking their heads in amazement. The victory earned her orders to the Scout Sniper School after graduation, an opportunity that would launch a career that would take her from Paris Island to battlefields around the world. But it was that 8th shot at 500 yards, fired in impossible conditions while her bigger stouter watched, that Maya would always remember as the moment she proved that being underestimated wasn't a weakness, it was a tactical advantage. The reckoning 6 months later, Maya Rodriguez graduated from Marine Corps Recruit Depot Paris Island with honors. She'd earned the highest marksmanship score in her company's history, qualified as an expert on every weapon system, and received orders to Scout Sniper School, a pipeline that typically took years to access. Staff Sergeant Walsh was there for graduation, wearing her dress blue uniform and the same stern expression that had terrified recruits for 2 decades. But when she shook Maya's hand during the ceremony, her grip lingered for a moment longer than regulation required. "I was wrong about you, Rodriguez," Walsh said quietly, your words barely audible over the ceremony's background noise. "I've been doing this for 20 years, and I've never seen shooting like that." Maya met her former drill instructor's eyes. "You pushed me harder than anyone else, ma'am. Made me prove I belonged here." Walsh's smile was slight but genuine. Maybe that was the point. Later, during the reception, Maya overheard a conversation between Walsh and another drill instructor that provided the final piece of the puzzle she'd been trying to solve for months. "I still can't believe you were so hard on Rodriguez," the other instructor was saying. "From day one, you rode her like she'd personally offended you." "She reminded me of myself," Walsh replied. "Same size, same doubts from everyone around her. When I went through boot camp 30 years ago, my drill instructor nearly broke me trying to make me quit. Told me I was too small, too weak, that I'd never make it in a man's Marine Corps. So you were paying it forward." I was making her prove she wanted it more than the obstacles in her way. Look how it turned out. Maya felt a strange mixture of anger and understanding. Walsh's methods had been brutal, unfair, and probably violated half a dozen training regulations. But they had also forged something unbreakable in Maya, a refusal to be defined by other people's limitations. The real vindication came 2 years later, when Maya was deployed to Afghanistan as a certified scout sniper. During a mission in Helmand Province, she was credited with a shot that saved an entire squad of Marines from an enemy ambush, a 1,200-yard engagement in high wind that military historians would later call one of the most difficult shots in modern combat. The after-action report found its way back to Paris Island, where Staff Sergeant Walsh kept it filed in her desk drawer. Sometimes, when dealing with recruits who reminded her of a young Maya Rodriguez, she'd pull out the report and remember that the Marines who seem least likely to succeed are sometimes the ones who succeed most spectacularly. Maya's story spread through the Marine Corps like wildfire. The recruit who'd been written off by almost everyone, but went on to become one of the Corps' most decorated snipers. It became a cautionary tale about judging people by their appearance and an inspirational story about the power of persistence. But for Maya, the real victory wasn't the medals or the recognition or even the shot that made military history. It was the lesson she'd learned on a windswept rifle range at Paris Island. That being underestimated was only a disadvantage if you let it be. Years later, when she became a marksmanship instructor herself, Maya would remember the young recruits who reminded others of her younger self. She'd push them hard, not out of cruelty, but because she understood that diamonds are formed under pressure. And sometimes, late at night, when the base was quiet, she'd think about that 8th shot at 500 yards and smile. It had taken exactly one perfect bullet to change everything. Not just her own trajectory, but the way an entire institution thought about what a Marine could look like. The quiet girl from the Texas ranch had become something else entirely. A Marine who'd learned that the best way to silence doubters isn't with words, but with results that speak louder than any argument ever could. Some battles are won with overwhelming force. Others are won with perfect precision, one shot at a time. If you enjoyed this story, don't forget to hit the subscribe button and become a part of our Everyday Life Stories community. Where are you watching from? Drop a comment below. We love hearing from our amazing viewers around the world.